Alright, so today's video, I want to talk about the different types of sparring, soft kit, full steel versus events, and how often you should spar in steel versus soft kit. Now to talk about this video, I've got here a steel axe and a soft kit axe, a foam axe, right? So we use this for practice, we use this for actual steel fighting. There was a conversation that came up recently, actually a little while ago, in some of the Armored Combat pages, where people were asking, how often should you spar in steel? How often should you be in full kit sparring, right? And there were a lot of opinions shared on this from a lot of different fighters on a lot of different teams, and they varied very widely. So I thought, today I would give my opinion and my thoughts. No reason for me to carry this the whole time. My thoughts, and I'm out here in my workout area. It is freezing cold because I have the heat off, and I'm about to head out to class to train down at the Knights Hall, where today one of the classes I'll be doing is live grappling. So it's essentially a soft kit. We might be in some sparring gear. We might just be grappling in gis, which we use to simulate grappling in armor. So I consider kind of soft kit grappling sparring, but I'm not going to be in steel. So I think, when I looked at all the answers and the way that people are talking, you get some teams that say we get into steel every week, or we get into steel every time we get together if they don't train weekly, right? Once a week is our steel sparring day. Other teams saying we barely ever use steel, or we barely ever use soft kit, we only use steel. And there's going to be a wide variation between what's working, and I think a lot of it comes down to a few things: definitions of what you consider sparring, which we can talk about. But more importantly, I think the first question you need to ask is, how often do you compete, and what do those competitions look like? So I'm going to talk about my experience and the training regimen at the Knights Hall where I train, and the team that I've been on, and how we do it. And what has been relatively successful for us. Let's start with talking about how often do we fight in steel, right? So one of the advantages of being in the area that I'm at is there are events held on at least a monthly basis, if not more. I can fight in steel at least once a month, usually twice a month, and that's just at the Knights Hall. There are other events I could go to. I could, go to other events or other communities that are not too far a drive for me, that are held regularly enough that I could supplement those. And we've had fighters fight literally, 2 months in a row every weekend if they want, in competition. So at the Knights Hall in our region, for us, our steel sparring is done in competition at events. Now, when I say competition, I don't mean nationally ranked events or even bohurt international regional kind of tournaments, not big events that we're doing and trying to really test ourselves necessarily against other great teams. When I say competitions, we hold fight events with tickets sold to the outside to the public. They come and watch, and we set up matches, and we just kind of do that without a lot of formality. I take those as my steel training. That's my sparring in steel. Right, so it's competitive, it's full contact, I want to win, but we're also doing it under the guise of training live. So if I lose a local match, it's not a big deal. I mean, I don't like it. I don't like losing anything. I like to win everything, but I'm not going into that going, I gotta win this. Sometimes I'm going to work on something. I want to practice something I've been trying in class. I'm going to do it live in a fight. Maybe I'm working on my endurance and my cardio, so I'm fighting extra matches that night, right? Maybe I'm recovering from an injury or some being a little banged up, but I fight less and go, hey, I just want one match tonight, trying to get back into it. Those are night fights, those are duels, those are pro fights. Night fight and pro fight meaning essentially the same thing with some variation, duels, melee on a semi-regular basis. So if you're in a region that's fighting regularly, competitively, that's having fights, you may do less steel sparring. I can't remember. The last time I was in steel that locally that wasn't an actual event where there were fans and audience allowed, we were competing and timed and scheduled and all that, was one of the camps that we did a few months back. It's probably months since I've been in just for regular sparring, right? Now, am I saying that's the best way? No, it's a way that works, right? So we do most of our sparring in soft kit. So foam weapons, foam padded armor, we're not wearing steel. That is a weekly event at the Knights Hall. There's weekly sparring, at least, right? Do I go every week? No. I don't have, I wish I had that time. I don't, but it's available, right? So there's sparring every week. I usually make one grappling sparring or one full striking soft kit sparring. They do on different days. I try to make them at different, that's the class structure at the Knights Hall. Now, where I train is a gym, not a club. And when I'm talking about the difference between that, what I mean is the gym has set classes every week that are structured. I'm showing up to a set class. It's a gym with gym classes, right? A lot of other schools are more clubs, and they go, hey, we all agree to get together on this day to train. So the difference being, if I don't show up, they're still going to hold class. Right? Not me, but if a bunch of us don't show up, they still have a class, right? Or a bunch of us show up and we sign up each week to see what class we're going to. So as an example, in about a half hour after this, I'm going to be leaving to drive about an hour down to the Knights Hall. I'm going to do a striking class, so it's all weapon striking. I'm going to do a Tabata, a workout class. I'm going to do a grappling fundamentals class. So we're working on walking through a bunch of grappling. And then I may or may not stay for live grappling tonight because I'm recovering from a little bit of a knee ache. So I might do the fourth class, I might not, but those are structured regardless of where I'm coming or not. Clubs, more often, you're going to look at all your teammates and going, hey, we're all agreeing on this date to be there for a training, right? You may do steel that day, soft kit that day, whatever your club needs. But the reason I want to talk about this, wasn't to say that our way is the best way. It's a way that works. But what I do think is important is, and I've seen most good teams kind of fade off of this in the years that I've been doing it, is spending a lot of time in steel wears and tears your body, wears and tears your armor, and injuries are more prevalent. So if you're going to be fighting in armor every week, full steel armor, you really got to be careful with how you're doing it. Should you be going full force? Probably not. Just like we don't go full force in soft kit very often. We work through things. We're training at half speed, half power a lot of times, or full speed, half power. There's definitely a lot of benefits to wearing steel and working on grappling, like walking through things, right? It feels different, getting used to the weight, used to what hangs up, your elbow cop gets hooked here if you're doing this move. So there is room for that. Should we do more steel, kind of walk through light sparring? Probably. Has to do with schedules and how often we can get people. And also, one of the nice things about soft kit is we can get more people doing it. It's, being a school and not just a team and a club, we have a lot of people who aren't in armor, who are getting in armor, or who are, training to get in armor, and they can come and participate in soft kit much easier. So we get a larger group of people and more people participating, which grows the sport. And that's just a benefit for that. So I think that, it's really about looking at the why you're doing stuff versus the regiment of we must do this. I've done some people say, if you're not in steel every week, you're losing out. Maybe you're having more injuries, right? Maybe you're having more repairs. Maybe there's lots you can get out of soft kit sparring that's very similar as long as you're paying attention to the differences, right? So foam swords, never gonna hurt me, really, right? It might bruise a little bit, but I'm not gonna go, ow, I have to sit down. Foam axe, I'm not gonna go, that's the same as a steel axe. So we have to pay attention if we're doing melee drills, when you're getting hit with a foam axe, you gotta go, hey, how would that feel if I was wearing in steel, right? Where would they be hitting gaps? Would I still be hurting? Would I react differently instead of ignoring it? That all comes with practice and training. The advantage, again, of getting in steel is real. It's as close as you get to the fighting because you are fighting, right? Whether you go in walkthroughs, half speed, full speed sparring, you're getting to do the actual sport, right? The downside of it, like I said, is wear and tear on body, injury, equipment, right? And also time. It takes time to get people there armored up. It takes time to get everybody in kit and get them ready and going, where we get a lot more efficiency out of showing up, doing workouts, throwing on soft kit gear, and getting at it, right? You get a lot more training in. I get a lot more fighting that way. And I think that, so it really comes down to kind of laying out your structure and your schedule for your club, team, school, and trying to figure out what makes sense for your region. Now, if I found us going out and every time we have a tournament, we're as a team wiped out and drained from being in armor, and I feel like it's dramatically different, we might revamp and reevaluate. That's not an issue that we're currently seeing, so it doesn't seem to be a detriment in that way. I'd rather spend more time learning the grappling techniques that I need to improve on, working on the team communication that we're working on, and doing all that than getting kitted up on a weekly basis, right? But I can say that because, like I said, I can fight almost twice a month already at an event if I want. There have been definitely times that I fought two times a month for months. There have been times that I haven't fought in a month because life gets in the way or things come up or the schedule's different. But I have the availability as part of the area that I'm in. If you're in an area that's not holding any competitions regularly, and maybe you only go to the big couple tournaments that you're getting to, you should probably get in steel on a regular basis and do some sparring, right? If you're prepping for a pro fight, for a big fight, you should probably get in steel and do some rounds in that, right? If you're prepping for something where you're going in, you got to give it all in, a 5-minute fight, and that's it. If you're going to an AMMA match, right, I would assume you're going to be in steel sparring some people pretty heavily leading up to that and then tapering down right before, similar to a fight camp, right? So we're not talking here about training for a specific event, for a specific format or tournament. We're talking about consistency. How should schools and clubs structure their tournament training is very different than their overall training, right? Everyone, I think, understands that just with any fight sport, you have ramp up periods and ramp down periods, right? And while, clearly we're a different sport than professional, NFL football, I do look at their practice habits a lot and look at what they've done over the years to become more efficient and effective. And one of the things that they've done is over time, they've become less and less contact except during actual games. Doesn't mean they're doing no contact, but they've done less. They've been taking away contact. They run more and more drills, more and more walkthroughs, more and more no contact days, right? And then they ramp up, and then they ramp down based off of need. Because I think the old idea of always train at your hardest, while it makes you hard, it makes you tough, it also makes you injured. And we have to be very honest that there's some danger to the sport, and you're going to get beat up and bruised. That's fine. That's fine after a real fight. I don't want to come out of my practice being so hurt that that my next weekend when I'm at a tournament, I'm less effective. So there's that balance always of efficiency, of time, effectiveness of training, your ability to recover and fight again, and you have to really look at that. So I'm not here telling you this is the right way. How many days of soft kit versus steel should you have? I'll tell you I'm a huge advocate for soft kit sparring and training. I think it's the most effective use of time, all things considered. If you're going to do one thing, that's the easiest thing to do with the most effective use of time. It translates over into steel. I think that if you soft kit spar, you should wear as much sparring gear as you can. What I mean by that is I wear my arm guards and my chest guards, and I wear all of the equipment that I have every time, not because I care about getting hit and by a foam sword and getting maybe a bruise at most, but I like the heat management of it. The more stuff I have on, the more I feel like I'm managing my heat just like I am in armor, and I'm getting used to being sweaty again, and that's that kind of like suffocating sweaty you can get in armor sometimes. You got to kind of train for that. That's great. I sometimes spar with a weight vest underneath my padded chest too, just to add the extra weight because it's easy. Again, that simulates a little bit of the armor weight without having to get all that gear on behind me. So again, maybe I'm not giving you any advice here. Maybe I'm not giving you any answers because I don't think there are any, but I do think if you hear someone say, like, you got to be in steel all the time, you got to ask the why. If you got someone saying you never get in steel, you got to ask the why. And I think the real answer is a balance based off of what your team needs, what their training situation environment looks like, how often you get together, right? How often you train in general, your tournament fight competition schedule, right? And what skills you're currently trying to work on. I think, it's probably also true that people who are newer need more time in armor because they're getting used to it, right? Like, I know my first couple years, like, getting in the armor and fighting is part of the challenge. Now I can go 6 months. I've done it. I've gone 6 months on an injury. When I was injured, 6 months injured, I was out of it for a while. I got back into it, And while I was out of shape from literally not doing very much for 6 months when I had a neck injury, the armor didn't feel bad anymore. It felt the same as before. Now the exhaustion and the tired and needing to rebuild my cardio, that was all just regular conditioning. But I could put that on and go, I understand this. This is part of who I am. This is part of, I am comfortable in this gear. It is my armor, right? Where when I first started fighting, I would, every time I get in, I go, oh my God, this stuff's so heavy. And I'm so tired, and I have to like readjust or recalibrate who I am in that gear. So I think as you get more experience, you probably need less time in steel for those things. You might need more time for really technical pieces. And when we're talking about team stuff like melee, I think a lot of the learning in melee is done in the communication, which doesn't need to be done in steel. You can be walking through plays, walking through situations, trying different things and saying, okay, if we get someone here, who's going here? How are we communicating? When are we two-on-one-ing? And that is not necessarily steel work. It can be done in steel, and then the communication gets harder in steel, so you got to do it in steel and talk about, so the stuff I'm yelling when I'm walking right now, I can walk through a whole set of moves. I can say, okay, help me, leave, go. I can have all that. When I'm in armor, I got to yell it, I got to hear it, all the clanging and banging, it changes the dynamic. Yes, but you can work the fundamentals without it. I'm an advocate, like I said, for more lighter training in those areas. Lighter sparring, soft sparring, stopping and checking on plays and communication. But I don't think you need to be in steel to do it. I don't think it hurts you to be in it. And I think it's an advantage if you are not regularly competing to have armored practice days. The one final thing I'd mention that we do not do in the Northeast, but I know other teams do who do armored practices more regularly, is they will eliminate the steel weapons. They will use just wooden sticks. And this is to help reduce the damage to the armor and to the people, right? So, and they'll, I've even seen some practices where they're just like, they go up instead of swinging hard, they'll tap with the stick and say, hey, I'm hitting you. And they go, okay, I acknowledge that, right? Also a good idea to mitigate injury, right? We don't need our teammates in a practice pole arm swinging at us full speed. Because that can hurt someone, and it does hurt people, and that's why we do it in fights, is to hurt the other team and get them out of it, right? So I think you can also, you can adjust your training on that level too. Not something that we regularly do, because like I said, most of the time I'm in steel, I'm competing. But even then, when I'm competing locally, I fight with lighter weapons. We fight against our friends. I fight with nicer weapons. I fight with a light falchion a lot of times. Or I fight with just a hand axe and not a two-hander. Or if I fight with my two-hander, which I've gone back to because I'm retraining myself on two-hander fighting, I will use a lighter two-hander than I sometimes, and I will pull some of my swings. I will go, hey, I'm really landing this on you. And do, like if it's a newer fighter or someone that, I'm working on a thing, I want to make sure I know I could hit the shot. I don't care if I, blow them up and win that round, because it's a practice for me under live training. When I go to a big tournament, we're bringing out the bigger weapons, or I'm swinging harder, full force, right? So I think all of that has to come into your training modalities, your mindset. Are you going into these practices in steel or these live events, which we use as practices? What's your mindset? What are you trying to get out of it? If you're starting out new, you're trying to win, man. You're trying to get out there and do the very best you can. Fight me with everything you got, right? If I'm fighting another fighter at my quality caliber, I'm probably fighting pretty hard. If I'm fighting a newer guy, I might be pulling back and working on some stuff. Sometimes I'm helping them build grit. I've definitely had fights where I go, this guy's new, and what I'm going to do is make sure he gets through all the rounds today. I'm going to push him hard. I'm going to step back for a minute and let him recover. I'm working on building his endurance. Right? And I'm a teammate even in that list, because we're all in the same group. We're all in the same community trying to get better together. So that's kind of my little rant. I'm freezing cold out here, so maybe I made sense, maybe I didn't. If you want to support my channel, please like, subscribe, follow. There's a link down below where you can buy t-shirts and hats and other equipment to help support my channel. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. If you have questions about developing your own training regimen, your own program, reach out to me. I also help teams put together kind of team training plans because it's something I'm passionate about, is making the sport grow. Have a good day. Enjoy the holidays.